Hi, I'm Odalys. My parents threw an $86,000 anniversary party and called security to drag me out like I was nothing. In front of their guests, they said I was a beggar. What they didn't know, every fork, every flower, every flute of champagne, they owed it to me. But the part that haunts me isn't what they said. It's how long they planned it, how long they smiled in my face while quietly cutting me out of everything. And when I finally pulled the plug, the truth didn't just hit them, it buried them. So tell me, what would you have done in my place? Let's begin. I arrived at the gates just before sunset, the orange glow stretching across the sky like it was trying to soften what I already knew would be a hard night. The estate was massive, lavish even by San Marino standards. 2 valets in tailored black suits stood by the entrance, flanked by topiary spheres and a gold-trimmed banner reading, "Celebrating 40 Years of Eternal Love, Augustus and Doreen Halifax." My parents. I wasn't dressed to impress, just a modest navy dress, my hair in a low twist, a pair of silver earrings that used to belong to my grandmother. Understated. Respectful. Still, I knew I stood out among the Bentley-filled driveway and designer gowns fluttering in the early evening breeze. One of the valets stepped forward. "Name, ma'am?" "Odalys Halifax," I said clearly. He squinted, flipping the guest list clipboard. Then again. "Could you spell that?" I did. Twice. He still couldn't find it. "It must be a mistake," I said, offering a smile I didn't feel. "I helped organize this. Actually, I funded—" "Of course, ma'am. Go right ahead," he said finally, gesturing me past. The smell of orchids and champagne filled the air. A string quartet played something light and forgettable. Guests mingled by the champagne tower, talking over lobster sliders, their laughter like thin glass. Everywhere I looked, gold, silk, velvet, glowing lights. My card had paid for every one of them. Not that anyone knew, or wanted to. I walked in with my back straight, eyes scanning for a familiar face. Surely someone would welcome me. A nod. A hand squeeze. A whisper of, "I'm glad you're here." Instead, my father's voice thundered from the far end of the ballroom. "What are you doing here?" The music halted for a split second. People turned. Champagne flutes stopped midair. I started, but he didn't let me finish. "You weren't invited?" he said. His voice echoed. "This is family only." Family only. My mother appeared beside him, her mouth pulled tight like she was holding in a yawn. "Odalys, honey, don't make this a scene." Then she said it again, but softer, crueler. "You weren't invited." And that's when Callista strutted past. Her gown shimmered like ocean water under chandeliers. She looked me over with a half-smile that didn't bother pretending kindness. "I thought the guest list was curated," she said loudly, sipping her flute. Laughter. One man near the cake table snorted. I didn't move. My feet wouldn't let me. "Security," my father barked. "Escort her out. Now." One of the tuxedoed guards hesitated. "That's my daughter," he added. The other man stepped forward. "That's the beggar," my father corrected. "Get this beggar out." It hit like ice down my spine. 2 hands, firm but not rough, took my arms. I let them. Guests parted. Whispers clung to the hem of my dress like static. At the threshold of the ballroom, someone snapped a photo. I saw the flash. I don't know who. Maybe Callista's assistant. Maybe someone who thought it was funny. I didn't scream. Didn't cry, didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. I walked, down the marble steps, past the hedge maze I paid to have restored, past the valet line where someone's Lamborghini coughed to life. When I reached the sidewalk, I stopped, took out my phone. The events folder, clicked, card, event services. 8-9, I pressed. Cancel funding. A little icon spun, then confirmed. Access revoked, payments reversed. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in my car, engine off, staring at the steering wheel when the first vibration came. 1 missed call, then 5. By the time I scrolled down, I counted 59, but the calls weren't what shook me. It was what I found in the group chat right after. I didn't plan to look. I truly didn't. After I hit cancel funding, I meant to drive home, pour a glass of water, and sit in the dark. Just breathe, just exist. But my hand moved before I could talk myself out of it. I unlocked the phone again, expecting more missed calls, more voicemails, but instead, it was the blinking red dot on the family group chat that caught my eye. 6 unread messages. I hadn't seen anything in there for weeks. Months, really. Since Callista's birthday. Before that? Maybe Thanksgiving. I tapped it open without thinking. I wish I hadn't. The thread started with a forwarded video. The thumbnail alone stopped my breath. It was me, being walked out by security, head high, shoulders square, like I was trying to remember how to be human. I hit play. The angle was shaky. Whoever recorded it had zoomed in from across the ballroom. There was a tiny gasp when my father said the words. Then the video zoomed in tighter as I was walked down the steps. Below the video, Callista had written, "Cinderella forgot she wasn't real." Laughter emojis followed. From my brother-in-law. From one of my cousins. My mother replied a few lines down. "Told you she'd show up eventually. Always finds a way to make it about her." A few messages down, someone posted a meme, a woman being dragged out of a wedding flailing. Captioned, "Guest of honor, apparently." No one said, "This isn't right." No one deleted anything. No one even hesitated. It was clear now. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a tense misunderstanding or some mismanaged invitation list. It was a trap, and I walked straight into it. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering above the reply field. My mouth was dry, but not from thirst. It was like my body was rejecting the taste of their words, their laughter, their cruelty. I scrolled down further, trying to breathe, trying to make it make sense. Then I saw it, the part that burned hotter than the rest. A family friend had commented, "The event was absolutely stunning, Callista. Who helped you plan it? Would love to use them for our fundraiser gala." Callista replied almost instantly, "Oh, it was all Dad. We had a family friend assist a little, but he really pulled it together." A family friend. I blinked, stared again. No mention of my name. No acknowledgement that the catering came from the vendors I'd spent months vetting. That the floral arrangements were my design. That the Amex card they ran every bill through was mine. Erased. I opened my photo album and began scrolling. June receipts, July invoices, the contract with the band, the deposit confirmation with the estate manager, screenshots of email chains, the black Amex ending in 7689. I texted them all to myself, labeled the thread, "Proof," then added a note below, "Don't delete, ever." I sat still for a long time, my fingers curled around the phone, knuckles aching. There were no tears, not yet. But my body felt like a piano string pulled too tight. I could hear it humming in my bones, the tension just under the skin. It wasn't just about money. It was about identity, contribution, being someone, being the one who shows up, pays up, covers the mess, and gets thanked with a lock on the door. I didn't write anything in the group, not a word. Instead, I copied the entire thread, screenshots from start to finish. Then I scrolled up and found my last message from a week ago, just 6 words. "Congrats on 40 years of love." I held my finger there, then tapped, "Delete message, they didn't deserve it." Not the sentiment, not the illusion, not anymore. I locked the screen. The silence inside the car felt deeper than anything I'd sat in before. Not even the soft noise of my own breath could fill the space. Outside the window, a couple walked their dog. Laughter drifted from a porch nearby. The world, it seemed, kept turning just fine. And when I opened the old filing cabinet, I found the agreement. Unsigned. I sat motionless in my car for what felt like forever. The streetlights had come on by the time I finally moved, fingers numb around the steering wheel. The ache in my temples throbbed in quiet rhythm with my heartbeat. I didn't go inside right away when I got home. I just stood in the doorway, keys still in hand, as if unsure whether I even belonged here. This tiny apartment, this quiet corner of Houston, my place. I dropped my purse on the couch and went straight for the old steel filing cabinet pushed into the far end of my hallway closet. It hadn't been touched in months, not since Dad's bypass. Back then, I told myself it was just easier to keep everything organized. That's what daughters do, right? Handle the messes no one else wants to touch. The drawer groaned as I pulled it open. Folders leaned against each other like tired soldiers. I flipped past the usual suspects: property taxes, HOA notices, investment statements they forwarded without reading. Then, near the back, I saw it. A manila folder with a red tab and black Sharpie in my handwriting. Anniversary planning. Final. I took it to the kitchen table. The lights flickered on above me. Soft, yellow, forgiving. I opened the folder and there it was. The contract from Rosewood Estate. No signatures from them. Just my name. Clean, centered, and final. No cosigns, no initials, no approved by. Just me. A slow chill crept from the base of my spine to the top of my neck. I flipped to the next page. Catering contract. My signature. Band agreement. Me. Florist. Me. Again. It hit harder than I expected. Not because I hadn't guessed it, but because deep down, I'd still hoped I was wrong. I remembered the call with Dad in March. I was in line at the pharmacy. He'd said, "You're so good at logistics, Odie. Just handle it, okay?" I had smiled. I had felt chosen, trusted. But now I saw it for what it really was. Delegation, not inclusion. Outsourcing, like hiring a wedding planner, like borrowing a favor you never intended to thank someone for. I leaned back in the chair, eyes scanning the numbers. $86,000, spread across vendors, deposits, final payments. All of it on me, no shared responsibility, just mine. I reached for my phone, scrolled through old voicemails. Most were junk, appointment confirmations, charity robocalls. Then I found it. Mom's voice, clipped and direct. "You're not family money, Odellis. You're just managing it." She'd said it during an argument about gifting options. I hadn't really heard it back then. I'd brushed it off, like so many things she said when she was tired or stressed or just mean. But now it made sense. They never saw me as one of them. I was the executor, the assistant, the help. I closed my eyes and let the words settle. The weight wasn't just financial, it was existential. This wasn't about being left out of a party. It was about being erased from the story entirely. I flipped to the last page of the stack, a final transfer slip dated tomorrow, $12,000, final payment to the decorator. I stared at it, lips pressed so tight I could taste the metallic bite of my own frustration. Then I breathed. Once. Steady. Opened the payment app. Clicked cancel. It was done. Within seconds my phone lit up. Callista. "She's pulling out? Are you serious?" Dad. "Odellis, call me, now." Then Mom. "You promised." I didn't reply. I sat with their voices echoing in digital bubbles I didn't open. Instead, I whispered to myself, soft but steady. I didn't promise to be disrespected. I pulled out my laptop, uploaded every document, contracts, voice recordings, screenshots, to a private drive. Named the folder Insurance, not Revenge, Truth. Because when people lie loudly, you need to keep your evidence quiet until it's time. I closed the lid. The notifications were still coming in, but the moment I stepped into that brunch cafe, I heard them talking, loud, careless, and about me. It was still early, just past 10, when I pulled into the parking lot outside the Magnolia Brunch House. A few cars were already lined up neatly along the curb, the morning sun dancing off polished windshields. I'd barely slept, and if I'm honest, I didn't know why I came. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the tiniest ember of hope that someone, anyone, would acknowledge what happened. Or maybe it was just habit, the same way I kept showing up to family events long after I stopped feeling like family. They'd told me this was just a casual little thing, a post-celebration get-together. No pressure, just coffee and breakfast. "We'd love for you to swing by," Callista had texted. I don't know why I believed her. I pushed open the glass door, the familiar chime of the bell overhead echoing into the airy space. The cafe was humming with soft conversation and the clink of cutlery. It smelled like maple syrup and over-toasted bagels. I paused just inside, scanning the room, and there they were, back corner, near the windows, 4 of them around a round table with champagne flutes already half empty. My mother's head was tilted back in laughter. My father leaned in close, whispering something to Callista. My brother-in-law, Derek, reached for another mimosa, smirking at whatever had just been said. They hadn't seen me yet. Then, over the soft hum of conversation, I heard it. My mother's voice, light, amused. She should be grateful. We let her feel important? A fork scraped a plate. Then Callista, a little louder than necessary, added, "We gave her a title and she thought she was royalty." Derek chuckled. Honestly, I thought she'd cry when security came. More laughter. I stood there, motionless. I hadn't even taken off my coat, my purse still slung over one shoulder, my fingers tightening around the strap. The hostess looked over at me, hesitated, then turned away. No one else noticed me, or maybe they were pretending not to. I didn't move forward. I turned to leave. That's when the waiter approached. He held a silver tray delicately, as if it carried something sacred. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "They asked me to bring this to you." I blinked at the flute of champagne resting on the tray. Tiny bubbles raced upward inside the glass, catching the light. A note was attached to the stem. I took it with 2 fingers. "No hard feelings," it read, in neat cursive. "Just family jokes." The same kind of glass from the anniversary dinner. Same bubbles, same smile Callista had when she said, "Cinderella forgot she wasn't real." This wasn't brunch, it was theater, and I had walked straight into Act 2. I looked at the glass for a long time, then gently set it back on the tray. The waiter stood there awkwardly. "Would you like me to tell them anything?" I shook my head. I walked over. Steady. Quiet. I could feel my shoes on the tile, every step measured like a metronome. The laughter died the moment I reached the table. Callista's lips froze mid-smirk. Derek's smile faltered. I looked at my father, then my mother, then Callista. "Just so you know," I said evenly, "the bill's yours now." My mother opened her mouth. I raised a hand. "Enjoy brunch. It might be the last thing I ever pay for." And then I turned around and walked out. The cold outside hit me like a truth I'd always known but never wanted to admit. The kind that doesn't knock you down but settles in your chest like stone. Back in my car, I sat for a moment. The engine was off. The silence around me was complete. My phone buzzed. One message. "Callista." "Wait, what do you mean by that?" I stared at the screen, then deleted it, unread. The first alert came in while I was brushing my teeth. A soft chime from my phone, muffled under a pile of receipts on my nightstand. "Payment declined," the subject line read. I didn't react, at first. I thought it might have been a duplicate charge or a flagged transaction. That happened sometimes with high-value vendors, but when I rinsed, dried my hands, and reached for the phone, another came in, then another. By the time I sat down at my desk, the screen was lighting up like a fire alarm, one after another. "Luxury SUV rental. Payment rejected. Maui 4 seasons. Insufficient funds. Private excursion. Card authorization failed." I sat completely still, the cursor on my screen blinking like it was holding its breath. This was it. The dominoes had started to fall. They didn't know it, but everything had been quietly routed through me. My shell company, my business card, my networks. I had paid for their flights, rooms, private chefs, event staff. I'd used trust accounts I managed. A dozen payments layered in like tiles. All they had to do was smile and show up. Now it was unraveling in real time. I logged into one of the accounts. The security notification had triggered after I updated my settings the night before. The system locked them out automatically. I'd left enough funds to keep the lights on, but not the chandeliers. The phone rang. Once, then again. I didn't answer. The third time, I let it go to voicemail. The fourth, I muted it completely. But on the sixth ring, something made me pick up. "Did you mess with the payment system?" my father barked. I pulled the phone away from my ear slightly, then put it back. "I fixed it," I said. "You're welcome." He let out a bitter scoff. "Odalys, we have guests in Maui. This is humiliating." I leaned back, eyes half-lidded. "Then maybe next time? Use your own card." Click. He hung up without another word. There was no apology, no admission, just outrage that the ride had ended. I set the phone down on the table and let the silence fill the space. But it didn't last long. A message popped up on the screen from Callista. I didn't check it. But 10 minutes later, a voice note came through. It was from her number, but I knew immediately she hadn't meant to send it to me. Her voice filled the room in that smug tone she saved for when she thought no one was listening. "I told you we shouldn't have let her fund this stuff. She's unstable, probably still bitter about being the extra kid." There was a pause, then my mother's voice, thin and cold. "She should be grateful we even raised her." Then a third voice, male, deeper, laughing. "Well, she's not even really one of us, is she?" I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just sat there, hand curled around the phone, like it might grow teeth and bite me next. Not even really one of us. Those words didn't come out of nowhere. They'd always hovered at the edge of things, just never spoken aloud until now. I closed my eyes and let the memories unspool like thread from a broken spool. The adoption papers after my parents lost their first son. The whispered, "At least we still have Callista," after I brought home straight A's. The empty seats at my college graduation. The way my name never made it onto family property. The way family always meant someone else. It wasn't just this weekend. It was always. By the time the sun had dipped low behind the curtains, I had pulled the old keepsake box from the top shelf of my closet. It was dented on the corner. The lid still smelled faintly of cedar. Inside were scraps of my childhood, old ribbons, a birthday card from a teacher, and one small red pin, shaped like a heart, I'd worn the year I helped pass out meals at a fundraiser. I was 10. They'd called me adorable and handed me a job title, junior hostess. Beneath the pin was a folded piece of lined paper, yellowed with time, written in blocky handwriting, $300 from Odalys to help Mom and Dad keep the house. I'd taken the money from my summer babysitting jobs. They'd never acknowledged it. My chest felt heavy, not with grief, but with the weight of clarity. I stood up, holding the red pin in my palm, the metal still cool. "Never again," I said softly, calmly, like a vow. No fireworks, no tantrums, just a line drawn so quietly, no one heard it, but it was there. The message didn't come from my family, not directly. It came from my goddaughter, Tessa, a college senior in Connecticut who'd grown up calling me Aunt D. She'd taken screenshots. One of them showed a message thread I wasn't supposed to see. Her text was short, "I thought you should know." I sat at the dining table, leftover tea gone cold in my cup. I tapped the first image. There it was. My father, in a group chat that apparently included my sister, brother-in-law, mother, and a handful of their country club friends. "Let's not invite Odalys next year," he'd written. "She acts like a beggar with entitlement." Right underneath it, Callista had replied, "Unstable and bitter don't mix well with caviar." A few people had reacted with laughing emojis. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I just sat there. For maybe 5 minutes, I couldn't move. My breath stayed low in my chest, like my lungs didn't want to expand. I looked around the room, my walls, my framed diplomas, the plants I'd watered by hand for years, and all I could think was, they really said that. About me. The same man who asked me to co-sign his mortgage after losing a lawsuit. The same woman who let me take on their hospital bills because it's easier with your business account, sweetheart. The same sister who wore my heels to her law school gala because hers weren't polished enough. I reached for my laptop. My fingers felt steadier than they should have been. I opened a new spreadsheet, titled it Family Expense Ledger, 2005 to Present. And I started typing, line by line, entry by entry. Mortgage in 2005, $13,400 Callista's tuition deposit, $8,200 mom's credit card debt, paid in full, $14,700 dad's failed restaurant insurance premium, $6,800, and on. Flights, flowers, caterers, therapy bills, emergency dental work. It came to $742,891.34. I stared at the total for a long time, not out of shock, out of cold realization. They hadn't just used me, they'd written me out of the story. I stood up and pulled the fireproof folder from the bottom drawer of my desk, the one labeled Barrow Holdings, Glenhaven Trust. Inside was a worn packet of legal documents I hadn't touched in over 2 years. My uncle had left behind a sizable inheritance, split into 2 trusts. I had been listed as a co-trustee when he passed, but when I reviewed the most recent signature sheet, something new hit me like a slap. They'd removed me. Callista and my mother had both signed off on an update to the trust 2 years ago, revoking my trustee status and reassigning access to themselves exclusively. No notice, no discussion, no legal transparency. Just a quiet paper cut meant to bleed me slowly, and that's when my detachment turned to calculation. I opened my email and drafted a formal message. To Glenhaven Holdings Legal Counsel subject, immediate hold, Odellis B. Barrow, due to breach of fiduciary duty and probable misappropriation of family trust assets, I am initiating a full audit and requesting immediate freeze of all Barrow-related accounts pending legal review. I CC'd the estate lawyer, the accountant, and the family members still listed on record. I attached 3 PDF files, the trust document, the amendment, and a screenshot of the message calling me a beggar. Then I hit send. For a moment, the house felt unnaturally quiet, and then my phone started buzzing. Callista. Oh, what are you doing? Dad. This is completely unnecessary. You're making a scene. Mom. This is not how a daughter behaves. I stared at the screen and typed back only once. This is not how a family behaves. Then I turned the phone face down on the counter, and silence settled again. By late evening, I'd already scheduled a consult with an estate attorney downtown. I reached out to a forensic accountant I knew from a prior case. I filed a request with the county clerk for every power of attorney form associated with the Barrow family since 2016. Something told me there was more buried under the surface, and I wasn't going to look away anymore. I used to believe patience was strength, that quiet loyalty was enough to earn my place. But maybe the real power wasn't in waiting. It was in knowing exactly when to stop. The courier arrived early, before the Texas sun had a chance to heat the front steps. He didn't say much, just handed over a thick manila envelope with a red-stamped seal that read, "Confidential Legal Filing." I nodded, signed, and closed the door behind me. Inside the envelope was the affidavit, neatly typed, notarized, sworn and signed by a man I hadn't seen since I was 17, Richard Holloway, my late uncle's estate attorney. He'd since retired to Santa Fe, but the document bore his seal, and I recognized the stiff, meticulous cadence of his voice in the language. It said 3 things. 1. I had been designated as the final authority on the Glenhaven disbursements since inception. 2. No changes to that designation were permitted without my countersignature. 3. Those changes had been forged. I let the papers sit on the table for a minute while I made coffee. I didn't need to read it twice. I knew what it meant. They'd committed fraud on a legal trust while telling everyone I was just the executor or unstable. The real story was in ink, and it had my name on it. That evening was the neighborhood HOA banquet, the same one I'd quietly paid for year after year, the rented ballroom at the River Oaks Country Club, the flower arrangements, the custom menus. This time, I didn't pay. I didn't hide either. I chose a navy silk jumpsuit, clean lines, no jewelry. Hair pulled back, folder in hand. When I entered, I didn't sneak to the back table like usual. I made eye contact. With my mother, with Callista, even with the neighbors who usually greeted me as Miss Barrow's assistant instead of Odellis. Halfway through the dinner, as the waiter set down dessert, I stood up and tapped my glass. The room fell into an expectant hush. I didn't raise my voice. "I won't be covering this year's HOA banquet," I said, eyes on no one in particular. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm no longer invisible. A rustle of confused whispers swept the room. I lifted the affidavit, slowly, carefully, is a sworn legal statement from my uncle's former attorney. It confirms that my family forged documents to take control of assets that were always meant to be managed by me. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. My father's napkin had stopped mid-air. Callista's grip on her wine glass whitened her knuckles. My mother's face was unreadable, but she didn't blink. I didn't stay for the reactions. I quietly folded the affidavit and returned to my seat. The dessert fork felt heavier than usual. I set it aside untouched. What I didn't say out loud? I had already sent the affidavit to the HOA board, anonymously. By 10 a.m. the next morning, a clip of me reading from it at the banquet had gone live on the HOA's internal newsletter. A neighbor I didn't know well had filmed it and shared it in the community Facebook group with a simple caption, "She funded it all," and they called her a beggar. By mid-morning, the clip had been forwarded across real estate WhatsApp groups, charity boards, and alumni circles. Someone even posted a side-by-side comparison of the family's vacation photos, captioned, "Funded by the beggar?" Comments poured in. Is it true they forged her signature? They cut her out of the trust she managed? Why would a daughter have to prove she existed? That afternoon, I got a call from Melis. We hadn't spoken in years. "They did it to me too," she said. Her voice was steady but tired. "They took my name off the executor list of the Montana property when I refused to transfer it to Callista. I stayed quiet, but I kept a copy of the original will." She sent it before I could ask. There it was, a draft copy of our uncle's will, dated 5 months before his stroke, naming me as the sole executor, not co-executor, not assistant trustee, sole. It had been scrubbed from every family file, rewritten, reworded, but it was real, and now it was mine. I forwarded it to my attorney, labeled it additional evidence. Then I sat on my porch for a while. The heat had finally started to let up. Cicadas buzzed low and steady in the trees. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. I didn't want them ruined. I wanted the truth to be louder than their version of it. But just as I began to breathe, another message came through. From an unknown number. Just a subject line. Resettlement terms. Callista B. I didn't open it. Not yet. The first thing I heard that morning wasn't birds or a car outside or even the hum of my fridge kicking in. It was my phone vibrating nonstop against the nightstand. I reached for it bleary-eyed, assuming it was another alert from the trust lawyer or the HOA thread. It wasn't. There it was, trending, already with thousands of shares, an audio clip from a syndicated podcast. I hit play. Some people think giving handouts makes them powerful, Callista's voice said, laced with syrupy confidence. But at the end of the day, they were always the family charity case, not a real daughter. And honestly, that's all she'll ever be. A pause, laughter, then silence. Then I watched the reactions roll in, comments flooding every thread. Did she really say that? Wait, wasn't this the same sister who just got exposed for forging documents? Someone else posted, "That woman has no shame." I didn't comment, didn't repost, didn't even save the clip. I just slid the phone face down and let the words hang in the air of my quiet living room. Charity case, not a real daughter. 2 hours later, I stood in the marble lobby of the bank downtown, the same institution where the Glenhaven Trust had been maintained for years. The banker, a silver-haired man in his late 50s, recognized me immediately. He didn't smile. "Ms. Barrow, I assume this is urgent." I nodded and handed him the affidavit. "It's time," I said simply. He read, skimmed the forged signature samples I'd brought, and nodded once. "I want every disbursement frozen immediately," I continued, "pending full audit, all access suspended, and flag any attempted activity under Callista Marin or anyone listed in connection with Barrow Holdings." His voice was calm, professional. "Understood. We'll begin immediately." I thanked him and left. No tears, no breathless fury, just stillness. That evening, Callista and my parents arrived at the Lake Union Club, an exclusive dinner spot overlooking the water. She'd booked it as a victory dinner, with real estate investors she was trying to lure into a side project. What she didn't expect? The maitre d' checking his iPad and frowning. Reservation cancelled. By Ms. Marin herself, it seems. And the card on file is no longer active. What? I could imagine her voice, clipped and irritated. Perhaps a misunderstanding, the maitre d' offered with a neutral tone. But the eyes of guests nearby had already turned. My father tried to argue. We've been coming here for years. I understand, the staffer replied politely. But without payment, I'm afraid we can't accommodate your party. They were escorted out. No shouting, no throwing fits. But they were seen, and people talked. By the time I returned home that night, my phone had dozens of missed calls. I didn't pick up a single one. Instead, I sat at the desk and slipped a single envelope into my bag. Just before midnight, I drove to their house. I didn't ring the doorbell. I simply walked up the stone path I'd power washed 2 summers ago and left the envelope on the porch bench. Inside was a printed statement, itemizing every payment I had canceled, every auto transfer I had revoked, every credit line I had pulled out of. And a short note, handwritten, "This is not revenge. This is self-respect. You raised me to be quiet. You should have known that didn't mean powerless." I stood there for a moment, not waiting for anyone to open the door, just breathing. Then I turned, stepped off the porch, and drove away. By the time I crossed into northern Idaho, the sun was barely touching the tops of the pine trees. The road twisted into stillness. No billboards, no honking, no chaos. Just snow-covered shoulders and the faint glint of ice where the sun kissed the asphalt. I parked beside a modest log cabin tucked near a frozen lake. No lakefront mansion, no steel gates, just a wood-burning stove, a roof that didn't leak, and silence so complete it felt like it could hold me. I carried one bag in, no phone, no laptop, just a journal, a book I might not read, and that soft, cream-colored scarf, the same one my foster grandmother gave me when I turned 17 and graduated early. Back then, she told me, "Some warmth, child, has to come from you first, but it always comes back to you, eventually." I never forgot that. I draped it over the arm of the chair by the window, then lowered myself beside the fire and let myself breathe. Not just inhale and exhale, but truly breathe. The next morning, with snow still falling in slow, lazy spirals, I opened my journal. Not to document anything for lawyers or to track payments, just to write. For me. Instead of words, my hand hesitated, hovered, and finally scrawled a letter I knew I'd never send. "Dear Mom, I used to think if I gave enough time, money, effort, silence, you'd finally say I mattered, that I belonged. But now I know. Love isn't a receipt, and I'm done paying. Odorless." I folded the page. No second thoughts, no edits. I walked to the fireplace, placed it inside, and watched the flames curl its edges. No anger, no tears, just release. Back in Seattle, the fallout was still unraveling. A friend sent me a photo. Callista, sitting at a trustee panel hearing, her makeup done a little too perfectly for someone facing allegations of fraud. My father was beside her. He didn't speak, didn't even defend her. He looked smaller, like someone who realized too late that his silence hadn't made him wise, it had made him complicit. The podcast backlash hadn't died down. If anything, it became one of those looping audio bites in people's TikToks, stitched into stories about family betrayal and generational harm. "That's what you call your sister on national radio?" one viral video asked. "Nah, that's not petty, that's broken." But I didn't follow the comment threads. I was in the cabin, watching icicles melt outside the window, stirring soup on the stove, adding more wood to the fire, and sleeping more soundly than I had in years. 3 days later, a letter arrived, no return address, just local postmark. Inside was a handwritten note on plain stationery. "Ms. Barrow, I processed the trust freeze when you walked in. I didn't say it then, but I want to now. Thank you. You don't know how many women needed to see that. Lila, First Bank of Cascade. That's when I finally cried. Not from shame, not from loneliness, but because someone had seen me, not as the extra kid, not as the bank account, not as the beggar, but as a woman who stood up. Later that evening, as the sky turned indigo and the trees outside blurred into soft silhouettes, I sat by the window again. Fingers wrapped around a warm mug, scarf draped over my shoulders. No news alerts, no legal updates, no calls I dreaded. Just me. Just peace. And in the quiet, I thought, I didn't win by yelling louder. I didn't heal by forcing apologies. I healed when I stopped asking for space and made it myself. That's when I knew. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of my life.